We are going to call this Public Works Committee meeting to Can you tell it's been a long day? Call this Public Works Committee meeting to order Thursday, January 25th, 2026. First order of the business, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Administrator, do you want me to do it or you?
Well, there's three of you. I can
Okay.
handle this.
Okay.
Chairman Frank,
Here.
Member Redmond,
Here.
and Member Searing. Here. You're all here.
Now our next order of business is public comment. Please note that public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Okay. Next order of business is a consent agenda. Approving the consent agenda, which is approving the minutes of the January 15, 2025. 2026, right?
Nope.
No.
Did you guys meet this year? I don't think so. Or was it?
Yeah, we did.
All right, then it should be 26.
2026.
You're right, you're right.
Public Works meeting.
I motion to approve the minutes for the January 15th, 2026 Public Works meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is items for action and or discussion. And first on the docket is review and discussion of proposed wastewater treatment plan for the DM North Middle. Would you like to take it away, Phil?
Sure. Full screen is statement, but you can start. Okay. So this, I'll go through it. It's like about 20 slides or so, giving a high level overview of the project. I know some of you are familiar with the project. Trustee Brinkman, this is probably your first time hearing about it. So feel free to stop me and ask me questions. So you can. There you go. So project drivers, just a refresher on that. Aging equipment, most of the equipment proposed replacement, it's over 40 years old. Safety, chemical handling spaces, bio tower, which is at the end of its useful life and beginning to deteriorate. Simplify operations, set the plant up for meeting their DNR permit requirements. Additional wet weather treatment capacity, and then just additional redundancy. So this is an aerial photo of the treatment plant. The blue or the new or proposed work. So here there's a existing mechanical screen that's proposed to be replaced. This is the bio tower that's proposed to be demolished. These tanks here are proposed to be converted. I'll get into that later on. Additional clarifier, additional chemical phosphorus removal building, demolishing existing chemicals in that space, and then RAS-wise pump station. So I'll get into all those in more detail. So there's samples. It's pretty small. So this is now I start to take clips out of the latest plan site, just kind of highlight where everything is at the site. So this is the new clarifier. There we go. So you drive in, if you're all familiar with the site, you drive in through this road here. This is the main administration control building. And then behind that are the treatment processes. So off to the right, proposing a new chemical phosphorus removal building. In this location, the RAS-wise pump station in this green space here, a new final clarifier next to these existing ones, and then space for a future fourth clarifier. This is a splitter structure, it's called. It distributes the flow equally to each of the three clarifiers. New blower, outdoor blower here. These tanks Our existing tanks, but they're being converted to different processes that I'll get into. The bio towers being demolished, and then there's the modifications in the headworks, which is the screens modifications. And then in the existing control building is where the chemicals are currently stored. This is a garage area, and then in the back of the garage, there's a chemical room. Those are proposed to be demolished, and then everything be relocated into the new space. The way we had the project set up is there's base bid elements, so these are. When you bid a project out like this, it's a lump sum contract for the contractor. And the base bid are things that this is what determines who the low bidder is. And then we have bid alternatives for other parts of the project that you can choose to move forward on or not, depending on how like the base bid comes in and how the bid alternatives come in. So the base bid, let's just say it's $4 million. And then the bid alternatives are all $1 million. You can choose how many of the bid alternatives to do, but the base bid work is in the contract and it's done regardless of what the alternatives are. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but just wanted to at least introduce that topic. So these are right now there's a combination of what they call aerobic digesters and aeration tanks. And they're gonna all be converted into aeration tanks, so this is part of that simplifying the process. So we're trying to, as part of this project, we're actually eliminating 2 processes, which simplifies things for staff. So instead of the wastewater going into a primary clarifier in the bio tower, it'll go into this expanded aeration tank zone. So the raw wastewater will come in here, and then it goes through a serpentine path out to the mixed liquor splitter structure, which takes flow to the clarifiers. So right now it comes into the primaries and then gets pumped up into the bio tower, and then it comes into 3 of these tanks. And the reason it was set up like that is they had, when they built the plant, they thought there was going to be a large industry that contributed a large like loading to the plant. So we call it biological oxygen demand. That's not here. You have just basically normal domestic wastewater. So this sort of process is much more efficient than having primary and bio tower for your size plant. It's part of the base bid too. So the existing primary clarifier, that's this tank, is being converted into aerobic digesters. So the sludge from the final clarifiers gets pumped into these tanks, and then it's digested in here before it's sent to the sludge storage tanks, and then from sludge storage it is ultimately land applied. So these tanks just consist of air that comes in, there's diffusers in here, and then there's the ability to decant to thicken the sludge. This is kind of a section view of what the tanks look like. So the diffusers on the bottom, and then the sludge level just varies depending on how much sludge is in the tank at the time. And this is where we have to fill in some portions of the existing primary clarifiers just to create a uniform bottom. And then we're adding a divider wall in the middle too. So there's 2 tanks that have flexibility to take a tank out of service. Final clarifier that's being added. So this is a circular tank. Flow comes in from the aeration tanks. It goes up through a tube, and then it's distributed in here. And here the solids all settle down to the bottom, and then clear water flows over a trough and goes into this pipe, and then that goes to UV disinfection and to the Milwaukee River. The sludge that settles, it's pulled off the bottom through kind of like a vacuum mechanism. It's almost like a pool, something you have for your pool. This goes to the Razwise pump station, and then that's pumped to those either the aerobic digesters. So the WAS, the sludge that's wasted, goes to the aerobic digesters, and the RAS is sludge that's returned because the aeration tanks is a biological process. So that's sent back there to provide the bugs for treatment. And then the last thing that comes out of here is scum. So the scum is scraped off the top, there's a skimmer mechanism that goes around, scrapes it in the trough. And then that goes into scum decant manhole, we call it, there's a small pump in here. Scum kind of thickens, and then clear water flows up through the baffle mechanism, and then that's returned to the head of the plant. So those are kind of the major components of the clarifier. The mixed liquor splitter structure, so again, this is still all base bid work. So the aeration tanks, the clarifier, the splitter structure, they all kind of are intertwined, as you kind of see by where the flow is going back and forth. It's hard to do one without the other. So this structure simply splits flow. So flow comes in from the aeration tanks, and then it flows over weirs and then through pipes into the clarifier. So this controls the even split. So you get 500,000 gallons going each clarifier or whatever that amount is. And then we have a space for a future clarifier here, which will have a knockout wall in it. So it could easily be added in the future. It just looks like this in section view. So the flow comes in through this pipe. There's a baffle wall here, so the flow doesn't just shoot down here and favor those two. It comes in and then it'll flow up and over the weir, and then there's a little port here to let scum flow through too. Raspberry's pump station. So this is all the sludge from the clarifiers. It gets drawn into these 3 individual independent wells. There's a pump in each of these, so you can control how much sludge you're pulling from each clarifier. Gets pumped through this pipe to the aeration tanks, and then periodically sludge is wasted through that pipe to aerobic digesters. And there's a valve on here that opens and closes automatically to control when the sludge is wasted. And these pumps get set a speed, so they can control how much sludge they want to return each day. There's flow meters. These are flow meters to meter how much flow is being pumped by each of the individual pumps. This is a below ground structure, so I don't know the section here, but these are fairly deep, they're about as deep as a clarifier. So and then this is a little bit higher here. So now this is the first bid alternative. So everything we looked at there is what would be in the base bid part of the project. The chemical phosphorus removal building. So 2 chemical storage tanks, 3 chemical pumps. There has to be a sprinkling room. So due to the amount of chemicals stored here, you have to have a sprinkling fire protection system. Separate electrical room, you don't want anything, chemicals being close to electrical equipment or water, so you try and keep that separate. Chemical fill, here there's 2 different fill connections for each tank, so the tanker truck pulls up and discharges its chemical. Vents are off the back so that the air is being pushed out, and we have chemical in it is nowhere near any of the employees. And then this is the existing chemical space. You can see how tight it is. Granted, these tanks are as big, and this isn't the same scale. So these tanks are actually, they're glued up to the same scale as they're closer to that size than it appears here. But this whole space is being demolished, walls being removed, and then this will just be more garage space essentially. Second bid alternative, mechanical screening. So there's one of the very first process in the treatment plant is what's called a mechanical screen. So the wastewater comes in here. This is raw wastewater. It goes through this screen. The screen removes plastics, wipes, rags, things like that you don't want in your pumps because they clog pumps or damage pumps. Flows through the screen and then goes into the raw sewage wet well here, where from there it's pumped to go through the remainder of the processes. And the screenings from here are discharged in what's called a screenings wash press. So that washes off organics, turns them into the treatment train, and then pulls out all the plastics, rags, that sort of thing, and puts it into a small. They just use a garbage can for that sort of, for the screenings. This is what it looks like in section view. So the wastewater is coming in, goes through the screen, it's slanted this way so that when it's activated, the screens don't pull back or fall off of it. Wastewater goes through and then goes to the rest of this. There's other stuff here, so that's why I might be wondering, why don't you just go here? There's flow meter, you can see things like that are not showing there. That's all. This is an existing structure. So we're removing the equipment, but then we're replacing the roof. We're putting in the proper gas detection equipment. Everything in this space has to be explosion proof. So all that's upgraded to current standards as part of this bid alternative. And then the only other thing to point out is the adjacent to this room is the break room. There's a door there and kind of an old chemical containment area that's planned to be demoed. There's some, they have now kind of retrofitted as a break room, some washer and dryer, and other things in there. So I'll talk a little bit more about that space. Later slide. Another bid alternative is the existing final clarifiers is adding what's called a density current baffle energy dissipating inlet. This is to help population settling to do better with the phosphorus removal, total suspended solids removal. This one I would say is probably of all the bid alternatives one that's cost coming high. This would be the first one I think you would not do. You're meeting permit without it right now. It would help. It'd help make things easier for them, but the other ones I think are carry the higher weight. And then a couple kind of additional smaller items that Eric has brought up that you would like to include in the project. So one of them is putting in, I'm calling it a closet here. Its intent would be so to be retrofitted into like a restroom in the future, potentially by staff. It's kind of, so this was the room, this is the room that has the screen in it, and then this is the break room. So we're looking at kind of taking the corners out of those rooms and trying to create a space. And then this would be used for like they have haulers come in to drop off septic or holding tank waste. And when they use the bathroom, I think they come into this bathroom, dirty it up and everything. So the idea would be to have their own kind of bathroom in that area and just have two bathrooms at the point. So as part of this project, we'd be looking at removing the wall and adding these walls. If we get into retrofitting into a bathroom, kind of kicks into a lot of oval checks and things like that. That we just wasn't really in our contract to look at. And I think it's going to start adding a lot more costs than if Eric has staff do it or finds a local plumber to do it. I think it'll be more cost effective if we give you the space and you do what you want space in the future. And then one other item that has come up is with the septic receiving. So right now, if a hauler comes to discharge a septic load, which is revenue for the village, they dump directly into this first manhole, which is the one that goes into the right upstream of screening. So Eric has asked if it'd be possible to put in kind of a larger manhole for receiving that would also have a sump in it, so that grit and other things would be rocks. There's usually rocks in these septic tanks that come out, and then some sort of volume so that it all doesn't come to the plants at once, because this can have a higher load that can upset the plant potentially. So this would be, right now I've got it shown as about 8 foot, as an 8 foot inner diameter manhole. Sounds like you may have more usable space than 3 feet. So this volume maybe will be closer to 2,000 gallons. So that would allow them to kind of throttle that flow back to the plant so they don't get a large slug of septage all at once. And we could make the station a little bit better for we can put a hatch on it or something else so that it take the orders a little bit better from it. So still working through some details on that, but that's something that Spirit has added. So it'd be nice to just include that in the project, and obviously there's costs associated with it. You're removing asphalt, putting in a fairly large manhole and whatnot. But I think that would be something we probably could either do as a bid alternative or just put it in the base bid. Right now, I kind of thought it'd be a bid alternative item. And then Eric, we could talk about if you wanted any kind of screen in there, you know, like a manual bar screen. That would be something that's.
If the mechanical screen gets, it's part of the project that gets replaced. That will only help us with everything because. We spent quite a bit of money because that screen don't really do much for regs.
Yeah.
So we're always hiring a contractor to come suck out all the regs out of the tanks, just because it doesn't do a very good job. That's why it's added in there as part of the project. I prefer not a bid alternate, but prefer to be a base bid, but take what I can get with it.
Okay, and then just a refresher on costs, haven't changed anything since the last time we presented that, but the base bid items here, 4.3 million. And then the three kind of major, or two major bid alternative items. The phosphorus removal building and screen, 1.5, 1.6. Final clarifier improvements of the baffles, about 300,000. So total 7.7. So project timeline and next steps. So here's the Clean Water Fund program timeline, just to give you everybody an idea of how this funding mechanism works. So the intent to apply that was submitted in October. So we submitted, we're on the project priorities list was published. I'll show you on the next page kind of where we sit on that. Facilities plan has been submitted and approved. So next step is the plans and specs and the Clean Water Fund loan application. So that's due by September 30th at the latest. We want to get, well, we're gonna get the plans and specs in the next couple days. And then the loan application I want to get done in July, August time frames. Stuff I'll have to get from the village, so financial things to complete the application. The actual funding list is posted in November, so that tells you, yes, you have funding, yes, you have principal forgiveness. And then the loan closing window, so the earliest you can close is like December on the loan. So if we bid the project in, advertise in October, open bids in November, you could theoretically close December. We usually have a longer award period for loan projects to give more time to have the loan closing. Otherwise, you know, contractor doesn't usually start a month or, you know, the week after contracts are signed. So the first payoff's usually not going to be until sometime early next year. So there's time there. Then the rest of this is just the latest you can close and whatnot. So that's the
So Phil, just to reiterate, when do we plan on going out to bid?
October.
October.
Advertise,
Yep.
open bids in either November, December.
Because I think ideally, if it works for you guys, what my plan would be is we'd open those bids, would get the lowest bidder. See what that breakout is of all those costs, bring that back to you all as the Public Works Committee for you to kind of filter and give your recommendation then to the full village board. You know, we're accepting this lowest bidder, and then these were all the projects and alternates, and we're recommending of those, right, this scope of projects. So that way we're having more of that kind of workshopping discussion here as a committee. And then by the time it goes to the board, it's already kind of been vetted as much as we can.
Yeah, the reason to wait, till the end is TNR takes usually about 90 days to plans and specs, so it puts us at that end of September is when they're give us any comments they have. Granted, they usually don't have a lot, but it's nice to have their comments before we advertise. It's,
And you're planning on having them submitted in the next 2 weeks, week?
I'm hoping next Tuesday.
Okay.
I think we're tracking for, but we won't have like the closets and the septic manhole on there, but that stuff they're not big to picture ticket items that they're not scrutinized or anything like that.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about that. So I know you can't read this, but these are clips from the DNR's, what they call the project priority list. So they say this is the PERF score, which is the ranking of, like, I guess, how important TNR thinks your project is. So you guys scored 92 points, which is higher on the list. So this funding list is 15 pages long. So there's 15 of these sheets. You're on page 2, so it's number 55 total. And then this is last year's the actual funding list. And I put it on here because this is the allocated general principal forgiveness. So this is what we're going for the 10%. And the PERF scores here, it got down to 65. So you're at 92. A lot of these projects, of these 55 projects ahead of you, I don't know, maybe 30 to 40% of them will actually go forward. A lot of communities just put their name on the list just in case they're ready for the project or they're not sure when they're gonna do it, but they wanna make sure they have funding secured if they do go for it. So yeah, the reason to show it is just it's not 100% guaranteed that you get principal forgiveness based on where your points are compared to where they funded down to last year. It looks like you're in good shape. But we won't know that until that list comes out in November. So that's when.
And I'll just say, if we do get that, I mean, that's something for us to celebrate. That's, if it's a $7 million project, that's $700,000 of, grant, so to speak, that is getting given to the village. So we'll make a big deal out of that.
Yeah, so that's a grant.
Yeah.
It's the Clean Water Fund loan.
Yeah.
Nope.
No. What did you say? It's like a 10%.
10%.
Law.
Yeah, it's called the
Yes.
Clean Water Fund Loan Program. So you get the loan through them, but then you get, so it's a super low interest loan through the state that the utility takes out, but then you get the 10% principal forgiveness on that.
So we don't have to pay 10%.
Yeah.
700,000.
$7 million project, you got $6.3 million. Essentially, and that loan would be this is how the loan interest rate is calculated. So April 1st, the market rate for you, I'm assuming you do a 20-year, that's typically what most communities do. You do 20-year tax exempt, the market rate's 4.3, you'd be at 2.35%, be the loan for that $6.3 million project. So that's why one reason why you do big water fund loans, because you get that low interest rate, and you're probably not gonna get that rate like that, so. But it's 55% of whatever current market rate is. So schedule, drawings and specs, the DNR, it's coming up within the next week. And then Clean Water Fund loan application, I'll work with Chris to get the necessary info to submit that. So it's in July, August, just because I don't know how quickly we need like audits and things like that. Other than loan app. DNR approval, end of September, project bid, so advertised, it actually would be November. And then open, advertised in October, open bids in November. Earliest loan closing date is December, and I said begin construction first quarter next year. So that stuff hasn't changed. Well, that's it.
And you
questions.
don't anticipate the DNR coming back with anything at all with the plans?
They shouldn't, they've approved the facilities plan.
Okay.
We really haven't veered for the facilities plan. Some of these minor things like, you know, doing a little bit more work in the admin building or adding a septic unit, well, that's not something that they consider. It's not really changing the process, they're more concerned about the overall. Like, are you, your process is meeting the DNR code requirements,
Okay,
so that's what they focus on.
so the base bid would be acceptable to them.
Yeah,
They're not gonna say that the alternates have to get thrown in or anything, it's just,
no, they won't dictate that, yes.
Okay.
It's complete. They will just say that they're approved if you move forward with that as a separate project in the future or something. You wouldn't have to go through that step in it.
So while this is going on, I have our friends at Ellers working through and updating our sewer rate study since we've last looked at it. One, to make sure that we're on track since we just got our audit. And two, to see, you know, really what changes, if anything, we need to make, especially if we take on this borrowing, what's going to be that impact, you know, for our rates. So what I hope is that when we come together in fall, I'll have that same spreadsheet I've shown you in the past of the projects. We'll have the actual costs, and then we'll have the impact of if you choose A and B, if you choose A, B, and C, right? You'll see the actual estimated rate impact on you, right, on your residents. So that'll help with your decision making.
How close are you usually when you provide those estimates? So like, say 7.7 million, is it around that?
We're around it. Yeah, right now, the most unpredictable thing is the electrical costs. Because the data centers are literally taking every electrician. The
Well,
Midwest
it takes every
side.
contractor, Midwest too. but-
Yeah, yeah, so it's a tough time right now to predict what bids are gonna come. at. We haven't seen them coming, we haven't seen facilities have projects and coming to completion, let's just put it that way. The last couple of projects we've all come in a little higher than we thought. It's mainly electrical, it's just. You have one electrical subcontractor bidding. It's almost like meter price at that point. It's just not enough out there to do the work. So that's the wild card, and there is, you know, there's a good amount of everything being done in this project has an electrical component to it, so there's no way around that. So,
So it's something our local contractors would typically bid? Have they ever bid village projects before?
They might be a subcontractor of whoever the main one is, so like, Staub was the last one. And then I think was Miller.
yeah, so Jay Miller is one we people bid on, next electric, keeper. Those are the.
So you-
usually bid.
You'll get the local ones, but it's. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of employees out at the data center, so.
So I'm curious too about the manhole with the offloading, like sewage from other. Wherever it's coming from. Like, we're taking in sewage from, like,
Tom of Fredonia, Thomas Sackville,
okay,
it's all
and. We make a decent margin on that?
local. I don't have the numbers, but I mean, it's.
Yeah, sledge hauling is a decent part of our utility budget as far as revenues go.
That's also a decent chunk of cost that's gonna cost an upgrade, so like. If you spend 1.1 million to upgrade something, just hauling sludge and then you only take in. 50,000 a year from hauling that sludge, it's gonna take a long time to pay back 1 million.
No, it is, and that's why what we're trying to look at is something easy instead of, you know, tearing up and adding a whole new station, it's just adding a little bit of capacity,
Yeah,
just so I don't get 5,000 gallons in 3 minutes, cause the plant goes nuts. But if what we're doing, or what Phil was doing was, you know, you have this tank, you have a 4 or 6 inch pipe there, and then 6 inches comes in through that pipe to bleed out, so instead of my pump's taking off and aeration going crazy, it bleeds it in, and it helps with the plant.
Yeah,
With taking in some of that, besides the revenue, it helps with the process. So I'm not looking to take in, everything out in the town, but the little bit we do, it's a little bit extra money and it helps. So,
Yeah, and you have the capacity for it, maybe you got a lot of growth here, then you might not have as much capacity for it. Right now, you.
I didn't know what the cost to create that.
Yeah, to put in the manhole.
Versus,
piping and yeah.
versus the actual income from it, how long it would take.
I mean, I guess that the structure itself, by the time you get done doing all the pavement and everything, I don't know, 50 grand. Something like that.
That's the cost you said?
Yeah, put in the foot diameter man.
Well, then, yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but we'd make that back in like 2 years.
Well, I don't know why, I thought I seen some higher, significantly higher number on one of the slides about that, or.
Oh,
No,
I didn't
no.
put any cost in for that.
No.
That's kind of a newer thing.
Yeah, because I didn't recognize that from one of your previous, you must have just last few months.
Yeah,
well,
just got to that 60%.
yeah, we've
Okay.
been talking.
Oh,
about
yeah.
Adding something, equalization tank.
Oh, yeah, I do remember you. I do recall you talking
Like,
about
like
that.
EJ said, I'm not looking to spend,
Yeah,
$1 million for something we're only taking in 10,000 a year. Doesn't make sense.
the other benefit is we can put that sump in that takes the rocks and things out, that right now, getting pumps, shortening the lives of the pumps and whatnot, so. That would be kind of an ancillary benefit, if you're gonna continue to take all waste. This will help things downstream of it.
Then I have one other question. The bio tower, I know the bio tower we have is in really bad shape, but
I
do
don't-
we not foresee a need for a bio tower potentially in the future with the expansion of the industrial park, the expansion of more homes,
No,
growth in the village?
no, and that's part of the extended aeration. And I would probably say there. 90% of our smells, or why the plant smells, is because we have the bio tower and the primary clarifier.
Yeah.
Because everything is just sitting there.
So what was the business that Fredonia thought they were gonna get? That
Meat market.
Yeah, the meat
So you're
market.
gonna get blood, fat. So
So
that would help.
So the expansion of like the industrial park and residents to the north as we expand the village we wouldn't hear in 7 years that you guys need a bio tower again.
I think if you got a dairy or something, let's say that came in, I think you put treatment limits on it and make them discharge to the plant, kind of what typical municipal waste is. That's usually how most communities handle it, they're gonna take again something that's 10 times as strong as local waste.
And we talk about that at development meetings when we meet with the developer. We want to know what's byproducts, literal byproducts that they're gonna put into our system. We had that conversation with Greasilla, with them coming in, just because we wanted to make sure it didn't have a negative impact. on
Well,
our
I'm
plant.
not.
Yeah.
I'm asking a question,
Yeah.
it's like if we start pumping more and more for more residents and more businesses, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, when you have this much waste coming in, you have to have a bio tower, and then.
Yeah.
Somehow the village expands to that level, and then in 7 years or something, and you're like, oh, we need a bio tower again.
Yeah, I think what you do is you expand area, you put in more aeration tanks, it'd be more, that's what most people would do now versus a bio tower. Bio tower is kind of an integrated technology. You got plenty of space to the west, to.
I took a class a few months ago and the teacher, I told him we had a bio tower. He goes, I didn't realize that one was still in existence, so.
Cool. And you're trying to change to less caustic chemicals and everything else too, right?
Yeah, so if the chemical does not get approved, if, the bid's too high, the plan was when we switched, we're adding a second, spot to add chemical. So we'd be adding some around either just after the wet well, right before the wet well, right into the wet well. And I know that's not ideal, but, and then like one of the aeration tanks to help polish it, because like right now, we're putting it in right at the end. So we don't even know what our capability is for reducing phosphorus. Cause like, I don't have a plant that can properly do it. Cause it's, so with the extended aeration, we can put it right in the beginning, see how it moves through, and then right at the end to polish that, to take that last little bit out. But right now, we're adding it right before it goes to the clarifiers. So if that goes through, we use currently ferric chloride, which is highly corrosive. And we're looking at going to like a alum or a hyper alum. And yeah, I mean, as long as you don't let it freeze, that it can crystallize, because it kind of looks like the speed bags when you blow them up, all that white powder. Kind of what alum does when you crystallize it. So if you don't keep up on like heat tape throughout,
Yeah, the only question should be heat tape is right in the tanks.
so we look at going to a cleaner, safer chemical. If we don't, then I'm sticking with what we have, because I can't mix. When you mix a positive and a negative, doesn't go.
So in other words, you're saying that you would prefer it not to be a bid alternative.
I hope it's not. Same with the mechanical street. And the only thing good with that right now is you don't have to worry about ventilation. Because the roof's not attached to the building. And none of the doors are, it's just. Needs to be,
It's a rough structure.
and basically that auger system that's there is. The cheapest and also the least efficient. Mechanical screening you can get. It is, my opinion, terrible. And when you guys had that hole in the back of the screen, you don't see that. Cause it's underwater, so everything was just bypassing. That's why they were spending so much money every year cleaning the tanks out, cause they're full of rigs. I'm gonna get one of those in a $40,000 pump and tears the blades out. We're not getting ahead here, falling behind, so. And with having Mike down there full time, he's able to help keep cleaning, keep up on that, so we don't have to keep hiring a contractor to clean those tanks. So he does a good job because he catches it now, so.
Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that and so your next steps are DNR approval, and then when do you want us to meet again? After we get our
After we-
bids back?
Yeah, if we get the bids back,
After we get the bids back, okay.
because we'll automatically accept the lowest bidder and then we'll know who we're working with and go from there. Great.
So. Thank you very much. All right, next order of business is discussion and possible recommendation to Village Board of Trustees on sidewalk policy.
All right. Well, I'm excited to bring this to you since we had our fun sidewalk conversation back in, April, whenever it was. So if you remember, apparently at one point, the village did have a sidewalk policy similar to this. It has gotten lost in the sea of time. And then in creating this, we reached out to John Long. Some of you might know he was a trustee for quite a long time here, an engineer, sat on Public Works, and he was very passionate about sidewalks. So we had a good conversation with him, just kind of stoking his memory of, well, what was the policy and how did we do things? So what you see before you is pretty much identical to what the village used to do. So it outlines here a couple things. First is it talks about side of street, something that we might not always think about, but it's why we require sidewalk per ordinance on all village streets. Yes, I know we do not have sidewalk on all village streets, but that's what's required by ordinance. This spells out that we would generally install that sidewalk on the north and west side of each street, and it outlines why. But keep in mind that there might be other determinations to move it to a different side. And then most importantly, it talks about cost responsibility. So the way that John had laid it out is that there's three different scenarios and three different ways that we would either split, take on, or put out the cost of sidewalk. So first is a village initiated replacement. So when the village determines that an existing sidewalk requires replacement due to age, condition, or infrastructure projects, then the village shall bear 100% of that cost removal. So think of if we have a utility line that we need to dig up and fix for a resident, and we have to remove a sidewalk piece, well, we're just going to pay for it because this is our project that we're doing. One could argue it'd be similar to Washington, right? Washington was our project that we decided to do. If we implemented this policy again, this would be a cost that the village would bear. Next is new sidewalk installation. So if it previously was non-existent, then we have a split. We have 50% village's responsibility of that cost and 50% of the property owner. Cost sharing applies to retroactive installations in developed areas where sidewalk were not originally constructed. Costs may include, the construction, engineering, administration, et cetera. So a good example of this is on North Milwaukee. There's that long stretch that currently does not have a sidewalk. If and when the village ever felt like entertaining this, then that would be a special assessment we'd put onto the property owner and split that cost 50-50 because both we want it and it's an added benefit for the resident, so to speak. And then finally is any new development or annexation. So for new developments that are coming into the village and growing, then that cost is 100% on the developer. So as they're building streets, the sewer, everything else that they're doing, that sidewalk requirement is on them as well. So that would be like Hillcrest. As Hillcrest builds and continues to do so along the road, curb, and et cetera, that sidewalk would also be their responsibility to take on 100%. So it breaks up those three different scenarios, covers village board authority and special assessments that's covered under state law. And then finally ends with administration. So it's between myself and Director Paulus to carry out this policy. So that is what I got for you. And we're happy to answer any questions you got.
Can we disagree with Paul thing? I mean, I'm fine with the last one, especially with new developers, if we have a rule that sidewalks need to be on one side or the other. Then when they're adding developments into the village, then of course they should be adhering to village policies.
Yep.
And obviously if the village needs to do tear up, they need to, but I don't think that we should be charging property owners 50% when the village decides like, we're gonna put sidewalks here. For the cost of it, all of the residents of the village are benefiting. Not just that resident, and quite honestly, actually, if you came and told me that I would benefit from putting sidewalks in my house, in front of my house right now, I'd call you a liar. Because I have to maintain it, I have to, cause property owners are required to maintain sidewalks in front of their property, so. I don't see a benefit to a sidewalk in front of my house. But I would say it should just be shared amongst all of the village residents, since all of the village residents will be able to use that new sidewalk that's there.
Any other thoughts?
I don't disagree with that, just purely because my house does not have a sidewalk in front of it. I also realize and recognize that there's gonna, a lot of other sidewalks need to get put in before you get to the very edge of the village. But
I'm curious how many areas are missing sidewalks, and let's say we went with DJ's idea, what the total cost would be on the village as opposed to splitting 50-50. I mean, do we know approximately how many?
Do you have any sort of map of like?
Sure. Balsam Fir, Pine Forest, Heather, Clover.
Part of Market.
St. Rose, Blueberry, Park Street has half. And then you get up to Crestfield Manor, Summit.
nothing in Fox Glen.
Yeah, nothing in Fox Glen and nothing in the north side of
Yeah,
Bayou.
nothing up next
So
week.
I'm curious, when was When was the policy in the village requiring a sidewalk on one side or the other in place?
So back in the day, from what I remember, there was child hit and killed on, I believe, got killed on South Milwaukee Street. And that's when they started pushing the sidewalk.
Was Fox Glen built after that?
No, it was before.
Or like, oh, I suppose this neighborhood up here has sidewalks.
Yeah.
But, or,
Yeah,
My-
North did, but like,
My neighborhood was built in the nineties and they did not have sidewalks.
they didn't require it back then.
you know, Manor, Summit, Crestview, they did.
So like, even the Pine Street neighborhood area, that was all before they kind of had that policy?
I don't know if the policy was always there, it's just never enforced, and then when something happened, then they were reactive to that issue.
So if you were to give a percentage of the village needing at least one side of the street,
I mean, it sounds like you said 40% of the village.
40%,
I would say probably 50%.
Okay.
There's quite
Yeah.
a bit.
that's a lot, yeah.
And I would say that that's not a priority of ours, to be frank. I mean, we have so many other things that we have to pay for.
Well, and
So
so some of those streets that you're talking about are road conditions as well, that
Yeah.
you would try to integrate sidewalks into some of the, like Martin.
Yeah.
The north or the west side of Martin.
I mean, our best practice has been, as we presented at the board meeting last, we want to make sure that we have a good inventory and take care of the sidewalk we already do have before we start putting in more sidewalk. So I don't think the scenario is going to happen anytime soon. But if it does, we want to know what that policy is going to be. And again, I don't have a hard feeling either way. I'm just reflecting what apparently the board's policy was in the past, and we can do any combination of this that you'd like.
On average, what do you think it costs to put in?
Sidewalk on an average
100
lot.
feet of sidewalk.
Well, just going off of. Well, I wanna say, so on top of my head, sidewalk on Washington would have been. 7,000, 8,000.
Yeah, I feel like it was 10K at the end because you added a little bit on that
So-
corner, so.
So
But
that
that
was
was-
section Washington was probably 8 or 9 grand,
And that's pretty short. That's a short stretch.
and that was smaller sidewalk. I don't like the smaller sidewalk, I prefer no sidewalk. But I prefer the 5x5s because if you start looking at, like, if we have to clean it or snow blow it. Our equipment is the 4 feet, so. Then you never see an edge over a sidewalk from the grass growing on there, so then we never get a clean sweep. So then we're going back out there again by hand and doing it. And I just look at the more sidewalk we keep adding. And the more sidewalk that we maintain, it's just more work for, you know, the crew, let alone myself, because if I'm going out there making sure that it's clean. There's no, you know, lifts on it that are higher than the 1/2 inch of what our policy says. You know, for trip hazards, I mean, it's a lot of work to keep up, you know, things, like with mailboxes. I know it's a priority, because if we hit them, we're fixing them, but how many are actually to specification in our ordinance? So sidewalks are good, I like them, it keeps the people off the road, but then my also comment to that is, most of the people I see walking on the street, not the sidewalk.
So we're not here to discuss the ordinance about having sidewalks. That's done. It's just a matter of how you want to share that cost.
Well, I get where you're going with the cost, and I understand, and, you know, like, I think you had said too in the past, like, some residents that have unfortunately been stuck having to make these payments because they were stuck that way, might be upset that we changed that policy, but we can't really control what previous boards have done. I mean, if it would cost $7 grand to stick sidewalk in front of my house, and the village told me that I was responsible for 3,500 of it. And that's some choice words.
There was a process. Yeah, sorry.
And say, no, the village told me they were replacing Wilson Street and they were going to replace the sewer lateral and I had no say. And so that was $5,000 out of my pocket that I could not do anything about. So, I mean, sometimes you have to make those tough decisions and, people who get the sidewalks, yeah, everybody benefits, but they're benefiting too by having sidewalks on their property. So, you can, I would have loved a sidewalk in front of my house when my kids are little, so they could ride their bikes, learning and what have you. So, I have no problem with the 50-50 issue, or I guess cost split on point 2.
And my recommendation, if you're split, as it seems like you might be, I might just call for a vote on it as is. And then if that dies, then we can look at what kind of edits you want to make.
Because honestly, I am split too.
Yeah,
Because I can see the history of this is. Would I be happy about the 3,500 putting in sidewalk in front of my house? No, but I also understand that that's part of owning a piece of property. And
But they expect us to maintain it. That's
Yeah.
where it goes
Yeah.
wrong. Like my house.
so it's
that
only
that
when the
divides the
sidewalk
village already.
is not previously.
By that sidewalk is me maintaining it for them. Otherwise, if you wanna stick me where the cost to put it in, you maintain it. And I'm sitting on the board here and I know how I feel frustrated about it. So like, I could imagine as a resident that had no involvement, or like, I would just be like,
And honestly, I'm gonna say my husband will feel exactly like you. Because he doesn't,
So do you
he
think
has,
it's,
he doesn't have
DJ, do
to.
you think it's because if you don't have sidewalk now and we cut through and we're putting sidewalk in and it's on the village then? But later down the road, when it comes for replacing or fixing, then it's 50%, is that?
what do you mean?
So if we came and said, we're going Pine Street all the way to the end, we're putting sidewalk.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay for it in villages. But 20 years down the road, hey, your sidewalk cracked, lift, whatever, now we're, assessing, for a sidewalk that's previously there, is that something? Are you stuck on the new sidewalk? Cause I know for me as a homeowner in the village, yeah, if you came and said, you're gonna get all this. Just because of how I am, I'd probably put the house for sale, cause that's a big chunk of money that I'm not gonna have. Then I get it, payments and that, and it's gonna be just like you guys are village residents. Someone tells you, you got $9,000 coming past you. Here's your 5-year option. But now if I say here, the village is gonna put this through. But anything after this, now we're joint.
In reality, we're not putting $7,000 worth of sidewalk on one person's property. It's more like, I don't know if the $100 a square rule still,
No.
no, what is it now?
Well, loaded concrete's not cheap anymore, and if you don't get enough, and this is the problem, if you don't have a big pour, I
Mhm.
mean, you're paying.
You're paying more.
Can I disclose how much it costs for John Locke's?
That wasn't, you're talking about a stamp set?
Well, that was a little bit extra, but I
don't know,
mean,
that's half
just to
stamps.
do a little piece. I mean, it was $1,000.
Okay,
For,
one piece?
no, it's,
I mean,
There's 2 pieces, they were, what, 3 feet wide, maybe 4 feet long?
Okay.
concrete is just ridiculous.
The contractor that did that piece, he said you can't get a truck to come out for $1,000.
So it's not getting any cheaper. And that's why we do that safe step. Was because for them to cut it for $70, make it last another 10 years, to replace it at a cost of $250 a square. I'd probably say you're over $200 a square now to replace it. So it's adding up. And now you have 5x5 squares on a corner house. get expensive.
So what I'm hearing you suggest is really A and B swapping. That if it's new sidewalk installation that's not previously existed, we take on the full cost. But if it's a replacement that we need to do, either because it's, not in code or whatever, then it's a split of 50-50. That's what he was suggesting. I don't know if that's any better to you or not, but that's,
I'm still just trying to figure out what benefit it has.
Yeah.
You know. And that,
Well, I mean,
I'm
it's,
saying this, even if there was sidewalks in front of my house right now,
Mhm.
already. Like, I would still be sitting here saying for the residents that don't have them, it needs to be just dispersed amongst the community.
well, but I think that's what they're also saying is that, if they're decided to put sidewalks in front of my house and your house, that the village would take care of that. But then in 10, 20 years, if something had to be done, then we would split the cost. Because the initial sidewalk, I would say that the initial sidewalk is probably
But I think
the
all of
more
that,
expensive part versus actually just repairing it, right? Because there's all the prep and the,
but I think all of that should be built into an assessment to the point where the village is putting that money correctly to maintain that infrastructure, right? It's just like roads and everything else, like anything that belongs to the village should be kind of being structured. Obviously, if the village thinks there's a benefit to sidewalks in front of my house, they obviously think my tax or my property value is now going to increase. So that increase in my property value due to their sidewalks should now contribute to that pool for sidewalk maintenance then. It's about properly like managing that, I guess. And I think in years past, we're seeing it with the treatment plant, like it just wasn't being done. The maintenance, the upkeep, the putting the money in the right places for those rainy days wasn't happening. And that's why here we are now with a treatment plant that's got 40-year-old stuff in it because people weren't making those choices. But I mean, I'm fine with this going into the board how it is. If it passes by a majority of the board, then the majority of the board decides it should still work that way. And if it doesn't, then we'll have to reassess what we want to bring forth.
read it again.
Like, kind of like the idea of that DJ suggests about if the village is going to, let's see, where's that how it's written down? That's replacement. So new installation would be the 100%.
You mean like what Director Paula said? Like
Or new lumps.
brand new.
Non-existing new would be in village.
Village. Yeah, and then the cost would be shared amongst everyone.
Because everybody would utilize the sidewalks in the village.
and then for option A, when the village determines that an existing sidewalk requires replacement, maybe due to age, condition, or infrastructure project, then it's split to 50-50. And I would say that's similar to, again, because I live in West Bend, that's similar to what West Bend does. So like if I had a broken sidewalk in front of my house and the city DPW comes to me and says, hey, sorry, we got to replace this, but don't worry, we'll split the cost with you because we know this is a burden. That's pretty common.
Did they do that with new sidewalk? Areas that didn't have.
Yeah, that I don't know. I mean-
I'd be curious to see what other communities are
Yeah.
doing.
Well, I know and this is my in-laws in Rochester, Minnesota. And they live in obviously a large community, but their neighborhood, how Rochester handles it is that if they need to go, because they're in, Rolling Meadows, that's their neighborhood. And if the city has to come in and actually do replacement in their neighborhood, they spread it out all within that neighborhood. They don't charge the individual homeowners, but they go through and they do an assessment for the entire neighborhood. And everyone in that neighborhood get the designated neighborhood areas gets split that cost versus the individual homeowners that the repair is being done on. Because they're in an older neighborhood. My father-in-law built that house back in the seventies. So it is an older established neighborhood, and so they do have quite a bit of sidewalk repair going on. Some of the houses are older from the sixties and some of them are more from the nineties, but
Yeah.
it's assessed by each neighborhood and then it's split among the cost of each. Now, I don't know how much we would have. Well, I mean, we do have some pretty designated neighborhoods, right? That we have the potential of doing something like that.
Yeah. But then you have that same thing, like, okay, my kids are gonna ride their bikes up to the new park up here because it's got all this benefit, or your kids, you're gonna bring your kids over to Children's Park in the Pine Street neighborhoods, you're gonna use the sidewalks.
Yeah,
Just-
probably,
Just let all of the.
probably the
residents
whole
cover the
village.
burden.
would make more sense.
And even with the repairs, like where do you draw the line then? Cause like if you come by my house, you're like, oh, these two sections need to be replaced, so it's 10 feet of sidewalk. So I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll replace it for you, and then I'll just build a village for half of it.
So that's in our
Would I
ordinance.
be
that-
allowed to
That
repair?
you're not allowed to. it has to
Right.
Go through me.
Why not? Because
Because
I do it for half the price than the contractor that the village decides to hire and bill me. So. So then you end up with that stipulation of like, well. Yeah, they were the cheapest contractor, but I could go buy 6 bags of concrete from Home Depot and do it for 600 instead of 2,000.
So I'm just looking at some neighboring municipalities. Village of Belgium puts the entire cost on the property owner, period. So that's pretty interesting.
City of Belgium.
Belgium.
And I mean, you know, I don't want to compare to West Bank, because West Bank's significantly bigger
Yeah.
than Philadelphia, and. You know, you look at Port's
Or
significantly
Stockville.
bigger. I mean, Belgium would be fairly comparable as far as, well, they're still bigger, but. It's-
Flooding property. Time cost of that one. Saukville almost has an identical ordinance as Belgium. So again, the property owner shall build, repair, construct, and perpetually maintain sidewalks, pay the entire cost thereof. So I mean, they're being stricter than we are recommending in this policy,
Right, so they're saying the property owner is responsible?
100%, yeah.
100%.
So does that mean the property owner then can source who does the repair?
No. Jason just had his done. And was this, he had to pay for the approach and then they assessed him for the sidewalk.
What's that in the village shows? Yeah, and even so in Saukville's here, the person who's installing the sidewalk needs to be under contract with the village to do the work. And has obtained a permit from the Public Works Director.
But the
About
property
random,
But maybe I misheard you, you said in Belgium and in.
Saukville.
In Belgium and
The
Saukville,
property owner is responsible.
the
for
property owner is
100%?
responsible 100% for the cost, but the village is responsible for finding the contractor and permitting the work.
So you've gotta go with what's the code.
And maybe there's more, you know,
We
reasoning
can
behind.
pay for this,
Yeah.
but we get to pick who's gonna do it.
Which is in our ordinance too, that it's gotta go through village. It can't be
Yeah,
something.
but we're covering some of the costs, if the village is covering some of the costs, in ours at least. Yeah.
Property owner.
But you tell me to pay 100% of it, but we're gonna tell you who's gonna do it.
You got 4 minutes left to me.
Yeah.
And I gotta go.
You gotta talk about the last, the
Yeah.
third item.
Okay,
So,
so
what are your thoughts
it
on the
looks
policy?
like, a little bit rewriting and
Like I said, this can be
research.
to the board, how it is. If, you know,
I mean, if there's at least a general consensus that at least switch A and B's costs, I mean, we could do that pretty easily. And then if you want to kick that scenario to the village board to discuss.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then I can source some other examples of nearby municipalities.
Yeah.
So we
That
can
would be
have
good.
that.
yes,
Yeah.
having some additional examples, I think would be helpful.
Yep.
All right, so we will move on.
Well, I think you wanna vote to recommend this to the village board with the changes that we discussed.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
motion to recommend a vote to the village
The sidewalk policy to the village
Sidewalk
board
policy to the
with the
village.
changes as discussed.
with the change that is discussed.
All those in favor? Aye.
Did we have a second? And okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, next order of business is update on crosswalk signage.
You want me to give the summary and then you give the solution?
Sure, you're better. Just go right to.
All right, you might notice that we still don't have a sidewalk there for engineering, ADA, a bunch of other reasons. A $15,000 project has quickly almost quadrupled to a $40,000 crosswalk project, and we ain't got money for that. That's my summary. That's why we haven't done it yet. But then Eric has been coming up with some creative solutions.
So another part of it is they're putting a gas main through to connect their school, so they're doing some updates, and they tore the ADA crosswalk out where we're looking at replacing. I would be on board, recommend, push to you guys is instead of spending, and that corner is just, it's a tight corner. You got houses, cut some trees down, so you got some more visibility. It's a tight corner, so there's no room to put the extra stuff like we did at Dollar General with the push buttons. Unless we're buying part of land or easement. I think it's just gonna create more of a headache. And then if you go to the other side where the hydrant is, then you have a retaining wall to deal with, so it could only be on one of the crosswalks. They do have, like some of our stop signs that are flashing, they do have flashing crosswalk signs or warning signs that would flash 24/7, but hopefully bring their attention to them. And that's at $1,000 a sign, so you'd be looking at 4 signs there. That's something we can purchase, and they'd be solar powered. That does not give you you press anything, it does not stop traffic, this is not a controlled intersection. So. Like Dollar General, you can press the button, that doesn't mean they're gonna stop.
Right.
So. I think
So it'd be flashing crosswalk signs, we'd repaint and update to the crosswalk there, and then take advantage of them tearing up that concrete anyway and making more ADA accessible.
So they're 88 now, but apparently 88 in 2015 is different from 2025. So that is what I would like to see there, instead of spending all this extra money on engineering and, we'd be ripping out concrete at least at one of the corners now. So we'd be redoing concrete, so. We did have a sign that was in the middle of the road, and I don't think there was a day that it doesn't get hit. So it's just a tight intersection. If you're turning from South Wilson on Fredonia Ave to go west, if you're not catching that, you clip it. But if you move it back too far, then you can't get past when the buses aren't loading, because there's no parking lane on the north side. It's just a tight intersection. So that's what I would do. And I mean, you have school zone, you have, I think there's 2 sets of signs east of the intersection, and I think there's 2 west of it. I mean, I don't know how much more you can do or keep doing for there, besides having, police presence of when it's a school zone at this time. And actually, whenever there's kids there,
They do have a
That's fine.
crosswalk guard too. I
Yeah.
think that goes out.
so. starting, if law enforcement's present, start writing tickets for doing, over 15 through the school zone. But that would be, instead of spending 40-some thousand, the engineering and sidewalk and sign.
Or one corner.
Or, yeah, that intersection,
And this is the intersection of coming out to Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wilson and
no, by the Catholic school there.
by the Catholic school,
Wilson.
Wilson and. Yeah, I noticed that they were doing work there and I thought it was crosswalk, but apparently not.
No, but at the same time, we don't want to leave you guys hanging and we wanted a solution before school starts again.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so you're saying 4 signs, $4,000 for solar powered signs. And I think we initially approved, what, 15,000 for that signage?
Yep.
Is that something that we could use that full 15,000 for more signs for along the, on Milwaukee and down by the splash pad, that we can add additional solar powered flashing signs saying children present and school zone and flashing. And by the way, I've noticed your spinners. I like your spinners on the stop signs.
Signs, just because like, after a while, they start to get ignored.
Yeah,
They get annoying.
They get ignored,
ignored.
like. if
So
it
that's where we
stops-
get- that's where
if
we
you
get
drive
the,
along one stretch and you see 4 of those flashing signs, at that point, you're just like, okay, there's no kid, like, usually the flashing is like, probably intentionally, potentially someone's gonna be coming, and if you do it. Too many of those along one
But that's
stretch.
where we get in our marshals, police presence and,
And that was like the spinners.
yeah.
It's like you said, another thing to pull their attention, because like you said, I drive through this every day, been for 10 years, and now all of a sudden. You have something new there, they catch that, and then after so much time, they don't pay attention to it anymore. So, I mean, I'm not trying to cheap out on the safety of the crosswalks, but
Do they not make like cheap push button ones though, that you like push and it just flashes for?
the
it's
problem.
not the sign, it's the
It's-
electrical and
It's
getting.
electrical, and I think it's also the ADA compliance, because I think what we discussed before with Strand, it's to make it ADA compliant, you almost need to extend the
Yeah.
sidewalk out, which cuts into a narrow road to begin with, so we have all kinds of concrete and electrical to actually
wasn't
push
sure
the
if it
button
was
from an
smaller
ADA
electrical.
compliance.
It pushes it and it just flashes for.
Yeah, well, we
minute.
still have the ADA issue of can somebody in a wheelchair actually hit the button?
Yeah, because one of Strand's, and I think Strand's #1 thing was, especially by Wisconsin, was a bump out in the road. And I said, absolutely not. Get
Yeah.
down with the plow, doing 25, and see what happens.
And so
I
to
could
put
look at
in
more
something like that would
signage.
be fine, but having it ADA compliant is the problem.
Or is like those flashing ones, is there like times of day they can set?
That was gonna be the other thing I can look into and see if I can get it, just like 7 to 9 or.
Or if they are solar powered, like. They not have a button that can come down that maybe isn't ADA compliant, but somebody could activate the flashing.
Right, but then the only thing is, if I need that ADA compliance part, and that's where, if we're gonna add a button. We either
Oh,
need it
yes.
right away. So that's the issue we're running into. I don't have enough room. And I don't think it's on the south side, I think it's on the north side.
I think the flashing with timer, if they have something like that, would be a good idea. That way-
Or maybe they have sensors. Like. Or you see a person approaching that starts flashing.
Yeah. And
Maybe they don't intend to cross, but at least it would alert traffic, like. You know, maybe it would be flashing a lot when school zone, like school days go on, but good, it'll draw attention to the kids, but then maybe. Like, if it is like motion sense, then when there's no one there, it might just stop the flashing. I don't know if they make anything like that.
Yeah, I could look at it more, I think we're just looking at. can we not do the Strand idea and go with the great
I
house?
think that then, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, well, and if we've already kind of decided as a board for the 15,000, because I think we did, correct?
Yeah, it's part of the CIP.
Yeah, and so if we can spread that out,
Yeah,
make the maximum use of that 15,000 and try to focus on 3 intersections versus just the one.
yeah.
I mean, and having flashing signs during the school hours, I mean, that's just going to help the crosswalk people and. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against the flash, I like the flashing signs, they definitely grab attention, I just know that. If it was flashing 24/7.
but the timer thing would also work too,
Right.
you know, especially during the
Just
school
there's a
time.
Timer that be on it.
Maybe I can find some spinners there too. Something.
Oh, yeah, no, I like those, I noticed those, and actually, I pointed them out to my husband, he's like, that's actually really nice because it does move and it catches your eye, because. You know, even if there's just the slightest bit of breeze, it catches your eye and it's like, oh, that's a color change.
And Brandon's wife saw that first. She didn't think that was a great idea though, but.
No, I got a lot of risk for putting on too.
Oh, no, I
Everyone else
really,
don't-
I noticed them immediately. No, I noticed it immediately and I went, that's an awesome idea, because it does, it just catches it enough.
I had pointed those out to the village marshal quite a while ago because I saw them in random at the one intersection that everybody blows through on D, I think. And I noticed those, they really stand out at night when your lights are on, so. They've got the reflector.
And I can't imagine those are that expensive. What are they?
You guys paid $40 for them each.
Okay,
Nice. Within budget. Good job.
If they make it through a winter.
Where they seize up and they spin.
all right, so we've got a decision on, you're going back from the
Yep.
drawing board and doing some more research on what kind of signage that we can get. And we're
Yeah,
agreed
if you
as
want, I
a,
can come back with it, otherwise. I can just go and do it, as long as I stay within what we
Yeah.
budgeted for. I
Yeah.
just want.
Are we in agreement?
I can't do it with what we
Yeah.
budgeted.
yeah, are we in agreement that as long as he's staying within budget
Yeah,
to,
timer.
And we'll pay
Timer.
already on the road to do 3D crosswalk things.
oh yeah, I do definitely think those 3D, brush off your painting skill, Brandon.
you're going down
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think
They'll
you
love
need to
it.
do that too, because that will, it won't, it'll make everybody who's used to driving down, they'll start ignoring it, but it's going to, you know, the random truck drivers or the random cars that go through, it's going to hopefully shock them slightly, but I'm all for doing. I'm all for that, so, painting skills. Well, pick a side road and just. Hey, in front of your house, come on. Okay, future correspondence administrator?
Nope.
How about items for future consideration?
We'll just plan on meeting back in fall, once we have the bids. Just so you guys have on your radar, if you remember from the CIP, next year is a non-big reconstruction year. We do that every other year. So next year, our goal is to pay entirely with cash to, what is it, Seal Coat? Mill and overlay, all of Fillmore. So that's been, again, one of the biggest requested roads in the entire village. So that'll be a nice win for
Okay.
us.
So
next
that's
year as
for
well.
plan for next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we have no correspondence or future consideration, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Please put this on Shell desk. You please issue all the doors you want. Yeah, sure.
Okay.